right. So characteristics of the middle class, unit 7.2. Part 2, our new middle class, which is our largest. Remember, this is the golden age of the middle class. They have grown to over 20% of the population in Western Europe. They believe strongly in classical liberalism, like that liberalism that we talked about last time. This shouldn't be new to you. Who are the people that caused all the problems and all the revolutions that we've talked about lately? The middle class, okay? So the middle class are liberal. Are they going to agree with Metternich and the Congress of Vienna?
No.
No, okay, because those are conservatives, so they're liberal. They believe in classical liberalism. This is going to start to shape why we are the way we are today, and I'll show you some examples of that, especially, and children, but you guys aren't children, you've grown out of your childhood. They sought protection of property in constitutional assemblies, such as the British Parliament and French Chamber of Deputies. They want free enterprise. They don't want the government coming in there saying, hey, you can only make this many of this product, you can only charge this much. They got to be the middle class because they made some money. They don't want anybody stepping in to hinder that. They have a reasonable amount of expendable income, meaning they have a little bit of money left over after all their bills and obligations are taken care of. What do when you have a little bit of extra money left on your paycheck when your car insurance and your gas is all paid for? I mean, you save it all, right? Yeah, you spend it. Bree's like, honestly, you spend it. That's what they're going to start doing. This is going to create like more economy. Okay, this is a good thing for the economy. One way to tell the middle class from our lower class workers, is something we talked about last time. They usually have servants, and I'm not just talking like you hire a gardener for the weekend. They have live-in servants, a nanny, a butler, a cook, a maid, someone living with them, a domestic unskilled worker. Okay, so they're also providing jobs for our lower class citizens as well, our unskilled workers. They gained political influence through increased land ownership that was tied to voting rights. They are going to start to exert their control, not like those sans-culottes did in the French Revolution by killing everybody, but by being able to vote because they own land now. So now that they can vote, they start to say, hey, maybe I won't cut everybody's head off. I'll just go in and vote for a representative that's going to support me, that's going to do what I want as the middle class. And so we see that change here. The 19th century, we'll see more and more people getting to vote. They emphasize individual liberty and respectability based on economic success. And so what that really means is that it's all about the money for them. It's all about money making. That's going to earn you respect in society. That's going to earn you social status. That is going to earn your individual liberty, because if you have enough money, you can buy property. If you have property, you can vote. And that's how they see it there. Families emphasize frugality and planning for the future. I think this is something you would see now. Before, you were just kind of sustaining, right? Like you were like, I hope I have enough to eat. Now you have this extra extra money, and you don't want to be wasteful with it. You want to plan for the future. This is where people are really going to start saving. I would say that that's kind of like our middle class today. You don't see a lot of middle class that are just like, I'm going to spend every penny. Then they end up lower class, right? I'm going to spend everything right as I get it. Middle class families, you usually hear your parents probably talking about how much percentage that they're going to save, or how much needs to be in saving, especially with you guys getting to go off to college. I'm sure that money has been a discussion that's been had in the household, most likely for all of you. They saw their family, their children, as the foundation of the social order. So what do they need to do? They want their children to do better. They've just done better. Isn't that how it is today? That your parents just say, I want it to be better for you than it was for me. Like, I want you to. That's a lot of pressure. I mean, especially my parents came up out of really bad situations. And so that was very impoverished situations. I mean, they turned everything around, became upper middle class, had really good jobs, the first ones to go to college in their family. I mean, that's dang, you couldn't have just moved across the tracks a little bit. This is a lot to live up to. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my dad, his parents were really poor, and they literally were living in the land down by the river. But we're kind of middle class. I mean, everybody in my family kind of has their own 3DS and computers, and both my parents work.
And so, and that's a middle class. This is something that's stuck with the middle class, is you want to do better, to try to keep moving forward. And so they're going to see what's the foundation of that. It's their children. We've got this money, let's not lose it. They want to build forward for their future. Education becomes, frugality and planning for the future becomes important. Education and religion were seen as extremely important. Remember, you're Protestant in a lot of areas, and Protestants really encourage that work ethic and all of that. And so that is going to be middle class very much so. Working class now makes up about 80% of the population. In the countryside, it's peasants. In the city, it's the proletariat. And so working class is different than middle class. I always like to put an MC or a WC. We're now moving out of the middle class into the working class. Still going to have a little bit more money than in the previous time period. But remember what do we say that the middle class works with? What do they use for their work? Minds. Very good. They use their minds. And what do you think our working class is going to use?
Hands.
They're going to use their hands, their body. This is going to be, this is going to be our physical labor. And so that's where we're heading. So, this is the working class. They make about 80% of the population. They aren't just in the cities, though. A lot of people misconstrue the working class in this time period as just being in the cities. We still have peasants in the countryside, so we still have some of that going on. Where did I stop here? Oh, many were peasants and hired hands. Less unified. They're less unified and the same as the middle classes. We're going to see more differences in our working class. What I mean by that is not like, look how different. A bigger difference in like your pay. Like you're going to be able to definitely see, like in the middle class, what was the difference between our two middle, one had more than one servant, one had one servant. I mean, there wasn't a big lifestyle change. You might just have to do a little more work in your house by yourself. For our lower classes, we're going to see a bigger difference, a bigger diversity. And so highly skilled workers makes up our first class. So where C is, I debated on putting numbers here, but I thought it looked confusing. Put a number 1. Like this is the top class of the working class. Like we did the 3 branches of the middle class. So C is the highly skilled workers. They're at the top. If this was a pyramid, they'd be at the top of the working class, about 15% of the population. Sometimes called the labor aristocracy. They made better money. They are like our construction bosses. They worked with their hands. Maybe they moved up to be like that foreman, okay? They work with their hands still, but they're the bosses. They're highly skilled craftsmen. Like maybe they're the only ones that know how to make that special groove in that cabinet or something. So they have worked their way up. They're specialized. Next are semi-skilled workers. These are the people like you probably haven't maybe trained quite as long, but you're still good at enough to make a profit. You're like a carpenter, a bricklayer, a successful factory worker. I mean, these are our true working class like of today. Like you're going out and working with your hands. Yes, ma'am.
So were they seeing a return to the apprenticeships like what they had in the Middle Ages?
Like of the guilds?
Well, not necessarily the guilds, but where you would send your oldest son off to another person to teach him the craft.
Not as much as we had seen before. This is going to be more like we're going to see compulsory education, so where students are made to go to school and they will learn some of these trades there, but not as much just under one individual. Not as much as like you would send your child out to live with that person and go through all these stages. We're going to see a shift in education. Yep. So, very good question. Okay, and then our bottom tier, number 3. Okay, I'm forgetting what was mentioned at the beginning of class. I can't think about this. I'll be under my desk in a minute. All right. 3, unskilled workers is the bottom. These are like our domestic servants. What I mean by unskilled is, are these people just like hopeless? No, they just don't have a specialized skill. They can clean, they can cook, they can take care of children. Those aren't specialized skills. Most people can do those things. I would hope that I wouldn't leave you with a child for 20 minutes and the child is like seriously messed up. Like I hope that you could figure out at least how to keep it alive for that amount of time. Okay, so these are unskilled workers. By 1900, over half of working women were domestic servants in England. They clean, they cook. Children comprised about 14% of workers in the British textile factories in 1874. And so this is just giving you a comparison how much A, women are still working mainly domestically, and B, how many less children we have working. So where do you think those children are going to go from the factories? They're going to be forced to go where now? School. You can say thank you. So how is the family changing? Changing family, we always get to talk about love first. I always put it first, get it out of the way. So we just talked about romanticism. And so that's going to lead very, very well into this. Romantic love in this time period, we have been talking forever about how money And financial success was the number one reason, or families getting married. Now it is romantic love. Welcome to the Victorian age. Romantic love became the most important reason for marriage at this time by 1850. Up to 1850, it has still been whether you can make a household, whether you have enough money to get married. Now we're going to see romantic love as the main reason. So for love instead of money. I'm sure not for all women. We still know there's the ones out there like, my goal in life is to be a trophy wife. I will marry a rich man. And I'm not saying that just from teenagers. I have heard friends of my own say that. I should probably like ixnay on the, not yet. The struggle is real. Like they're still out there. So be wary, you guys. I should probably go back and edit that out before it gets posted, just in case my friends watch, as they say they do. All right. So the rising standard of living will make it possible for people to marry younger, so we're not having to wait as long as we were in the previous times. Yet economic status was still an important issue for the middle class even after 1850. Remember, they're worried about keeping this money now. So your economic status, how many servants you have, still important, but it's not like the same economic problems we had before, like having a place to live. Like you've got that part taken care of. Middle class females were monitored extremely closely by parents, however, at this time period. Victorian age, again, monitored very closely. Chastity was paramount. They want to protect those reputations of their daughters so their daughters can go out and have better lives and, marry the best man possible out there for her. She is not going to have that happen for her if she is running around in the streets. So middle class boys, however, were not monitored nearly as much. Okay, so we still have a double standard. Yeah, it's like my husband says all the time to me, is one of my biggest pet peeves. If we had a daughter, I will never sleep again. And I'm like, well, what if we had a son? And he's like, oh, that's easy. I'm just like, no, there should be the same standards, because I was a teenage girl and I know that we make much better decisions than teenage boys run around and do on the weekend. And so, no. Yes. What?
Are you going to edit that too?
Yeah, I'm going to edit that too.
You need to leave it all in.
Wasn't the gender discrepancy between males and females, young males and females in Victorian era, one woman couldn't, there was one man for every 10 women because of how often women were dying young?
I don't think the population is that low. It's just still that double standard going on and on romantic love, and we're going to talk about prostitution again, as we always do. But yeah, but the life expectancy at this time period is actually improving. We have better living conditions, better working conditions. So what did you do? Still double standard. And here's one of the reasons, okay? If you think about it, I know we were having fun with it, and boys, I'm sorry. That's just my little pet peeve. Because my dad, under his thumb as a teenage girl, he didn't have any boys though, so I didn't have anything to compare it to. But, yeah. Anyway, so if you're a girl and you make a bad decision, it's you can't be like, wasn't me, didn't do it. If you're a guy, wasn't me. You can walk away from it. Girls, not so much. Sorry, ladies, you're kind of stuck with the effects. Yeah. So, high rate of illegitimacy, however, will decrease after 1850. Remember all that illegitimacy we talked about before 1850? Because high rate of premarital sex, but more couples married if the girl became pregnant at this time. So that makes it legitimate. Okay, so
when they got pregnant,
they got married. Mm-hmm. But usually because they're middle class and they can't afford to. Remember, our illegitimate children we had was because a guy would be like, come on, Bev, I'm going to marry you. It's okay. We're having to wait till we're really old because it's all about money. And he'd get her pregnant, and then the job would fall through, or his apprenticeship would fall through, or he couldn't get into the industry he wanted, and he couldn't marry her because he didn't have the money to do it. Now that's not as much of an answer for the guys. Sorry, guys. She's going to look at you and go, your family's middle class, you're middle class, put a ring on it. Okay, that's where we're at. So, fidelity in marriage at this time was particularly emphasized in the middle class. These are bourgeoisie values. Economic stability. Okay, It's really unromantic when we're talking about romantic love, but if you are unfaithful in your marriage as a male, and you went out and you got another woman pregnant, that would hurt the economic situation of the family you're in. That would hurt your middle class status. So it's as simple as that, okay? So fidelity was on a high priority. However, prostitution, middle and upper class men constituted most of the customers of this time period, and these are the ones that are marrying late. And this comes back to what Nicole said about sometimes not having a woman that you're ready to marry you right there, or of your age, or of your same background. And so we will still have prostitution. It's still existing. It's still out there. Yes.
So, like, is marriage like same age now? Like,
Yes, we are more in similar age. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, still in like the early 1800s it was as well, but it was still based a lot on money. Mm-hmm. All right. After 1850, this is where work for women, ladies, this is where work for you is going to become increasingly distinct and separated from your husbands. Remember, you've been equals in the farming. You've been equals in the cottage putting out industry. You are now being separated and given a distinct role, and it might not be the one that you like. Husbands will now become the primary wage earners in factories or businesses. Distinct difference. They become the breadwinners. This is where all that comes from. Like, he's supposed to make the money, and you're supposed to stay home. Child rearing. This is actually, in the middle class, is where we see the biggest distinction. Lower class women are still needing to work. Upper class women are kind of always not, make their choices about what they want to do, usually more educated. They aren't working, but they have servants. They have other women living in their home to do jobs for them. And so middle class is where we see this most distinct separation of men and women's work. Child rearing will become more child-centered, with the wife dominating the home domain. This is where we get that like recluse, like she's supposed to build this like recluse for the man and the children, like this like it's a place to come, he can come home to and feel loved and safe after a hard day's work. She's there to make that refuge for him. Middle class women began to organize, however, because they're about as happy about it as this row of girls right here just looked when I said it. They start to organize because they have been an important part in side by side with their spouses in these other industries, and they do not like it and start to resist their second class status to husbands. They demanded access to higher education and professional employment, and they sought the repeal of laws that denied women property ownership. And so we're going to start to follow this through as these women start to push harder. So we're getting towards more modern, guys, but we know it won't be for a while. And so I left off here with child rearing. There we go. After 1850, this is all in your note packet. Sorry, I didn't change the slide. I got so busy talking about how it's unfair to be a girl. Anyway, so child rearing in middle class families. Raising children becomes more focused on the kid. It becomes more child centered. Why? Lower mortality rates for children will result in parents becoming more emotionally involved in children's lives. Let's come back to that thing. Oh, little Jimmy's going to live past 9, I might give him a middle name. I might give him a room. Like, I might get attached to this little thing that's been following me around for 9 years. So you're more invested in your children. I know it sounds horrible, but I guess if you thought about like all those time periods we came through, like how devastating would it be knowing like you have 6 children, 3 are going to survive? I mean, you would kind of detach yourself because that would be a very hard thing. And I'm not talking they just die in infancy. I mean, anywhere up to the age of 9. And so I can kind of understand that. I think that's hard for us sometimes to be put into perspective. But if you knew you were going to have 6 children in your life and only 50% of them were going to survive. Yes, ma'am.
I also know that around this time period it started posing the dead children where they looked lifelike and even had people keep eyes on them so they could have that last photo.
Death photos, yeah. Yeah, to remember them because they have become more attached to them. So now when they do die, it's a much more instead of kind of the under the rug thing. Yep, very good. Where to leave off here? So, we talked about women, we talked about children. Married couples. So mortality rates here you can kind of read through. One thing that I put in here, and this is shocking, more women are going to start to breastfeed their own children. As gross as that is. Because remember, that was like considered beneath them before. Like, they're going to start feeding their own babies. So, I mean, like, yay for that. Lower rate of illegitimacy. I mean, you're getting more attached to your children, so fewer are left on the steps of those foundling hospitals. So all that's changing. So married couples are starting to have decreased numbers of children, especially the middle class. Why? Because the children are living longer. Why? Because they want to keep their middle class status, and the more children you have, the less money you have. So they start to say, okay, our children are living longer, we can probably invest, let's give them names, let's hang on to this little group we have, and we're going to raise them, you know, through the whole. And middle class parents, as we're going to see, are going to hold on to their children longer than lower class working parents. They are going to invest themselves in their kids' future, their education, where they're going. They're going to become very, like, use a vocab word from my world history kids today, doting over their children. They sought to provide more care to their children. That takes more money. This trend is going to continue until after World War II. Okay, so this is a really long trend with children having fewer. Of course, why would this change after World War II? This had baby boom. Why? A lot of soldiers coming back and a lot of soldiers not coming back. And so population becomes a big focus, especially because these countries still very nationalistic, and we need to promote our nation's children. And yeah, and so this trend will continue up until after World War II. Other things to say about men and women here. Sexuality is if you think about the Victorian age, I don't know if I have a slide here. No, I don't. Sexuality was very much repressed at this time in the Victorian era. I'm sure that you guys have talked about that before. Boys are really never like left alone, and girls are like forbidden from things. So boys are like, even though that they're allowed more freedoms than the girls when it comes to being around a girl. They're very closely monitored. Sexuality is supposed to be repressed. It's very much like, but it's like tongue in cheek because it's supposed to be repressed, but that makes it even more like wanted by the young ladies and boys. Girls are not even allowed to ride bikes or horses unless they are side saddles, so I'll let you like think in your mind why that would be. So I don't have to go all there. So the repressed sexuality, all of these things, and parents are more intent on improving the economic and social condition of their children. They're going to start to say, maybe we should feed them healthier food. They're going to be around for a little bit. Maybe I should take them to the doctor when they're sick. And doctors actually, remember we talked about doctors wouldn't even treat like children in the before 1850s if they were ill. That was just like, it's a child. Like now they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to take care of this kid that's sick. They're going to provide them education. I mean, why would you waste time on education if the kid's just going to like flip over dead one day? Yeah, so all of these things start to, I mean, you guys are lucky. Lucky you were born after all of us were, after 1850. Yes?
Was the generation during World War I kind of known as the lost generation because so many women, there weren't enough men for them to have families?
Yeah. We have, in World War I, there's just a lot going on with family. Yeah, and we'll get there. We're almost there. 2 more units left after this one. Ah. All right, so child rearing in working class families. So we've just talked, if you didn't make a note that we were talking about middle class, that was middle class. You might want to change colors of highlighters, moving to working class. Working class families. And this picture doesn't really come from this time period, but it's one of my favorite pictures. This is what was called a sun cage for children out in industrialized cities because they felt like, because now you're supposed to take care of your children, they weren't getting enough sun or air or wind. And so in these tall apartment buildings, they put them outside the windows of skyscrapers and put the baby's little basket in there and let them sit to get sunshine and fresh air. And that's just like one of my favorite, scariest inventions ever. Yeah. Yeah, to try to feel like you're not in the city when you're in the city. But like, man, can you imagine? I mean, I'm sure this baby, I don't know. They say this, like babies would be oblivious, but look at that baby's face. Like that baby looks like, oh crap. Yeah, or it's taking a crap. One of the two, but I would not want to be the baby in that cage. So, child rearing in the working class families. Unlike middle class kids, working class children did not remain economically dependent on their families. What do you think they're going to do instead of becoming economically dependent? Their future tied up in their parents. What are they going to do? They're working class. They're gonna go to work. They're gonna get a job. Okay? Because they have to, because their parents don't have enough money to provide for them like middle class families. Boys and girls went to work when they reached adolescence. And it's not just for themselves. Their money is needed to help their family. In some cases, this might be for some of you. I know many students whose paychecks go directly to their family to help pay for their food, their clothes, their housing expenses. And so that is working class. And so they're still at home. It's not like they went and got a job and suddenly, boom, they have an apartment in the city. They're still living at home, but they're helping to pay for what it takes to feed them, clothe them, etc. Young working class adolescents are able to break away from that doting family more easily. Like, their parents are too busy working. The kids are already working. They're able to say, hey, dude, I'm going to go see that girl, and you're not going to follow me around. So they have an easier time than those middle-class kiddos breaking away from all of the rules. And in the 20th century, middle-class youth will follow this pattern. So middle-class teenagers in the 20th century are going to look at those lower, like the working-class kids and be like, their parents aren't sitting between them on that swing. I'm going to separate myself from my family earlier. And this is where we get that. We leave our parents' homes much earlier than some places in Europe where they still hung on to this 1850s ideal that you stay at home with your family for a very long time and your family supports you till you're married. Okay? So that's going to start to happen at the end of the 19th century. And so what we need to talk about next is life in the fin de siècle, which just means, it's a really pretty way of saying end of the century. So you see an end of the century in your lifetime, you can just really coolly say the end of the siècle. And that is fin de siècle, I should say. End of the century. This is also called the Belle Époque. I mean, just pretty fancy ways to say the good old days. So if you are going to talk to your children later in life and say that, this moment in your life was the good old days, this would be the Belle Époque. This was the good old days. So, yeah. We come to the end of the century. We're going to see an increase of standard of living in all industrial countries. Standard of living is going to go up for everyone. Okay, that means that all those poor conditions we've seen, everybody's going to improve. Can't see this picture very well, and I just didn't have a particular picture, and I didn't want you to just be staring at nothing, but it doesn't show up very well. But it says right there, the good old days when men were men, boys dressed like men, prisons took children, and fruit was candy. Anybody seen my pills? So just the funny, the kids eating a banana, and all these kids are like, oh my God, I want that banana, because that was candy to them. It was sugar, fruit. They hadn't had this before. It wasn't in their diet. So anyway, this period would later be remembered after World War I, after the lost, good preview there, Nicole. After this dark time, this will be remembered as the good old days, because after, you always say, in the good old days when I walked to school up 10 miles up to school and 10 miles up back from school, in the good old days, they remember it fondly, the good old times. This is after, you have to remember, we can look at this in these terms. They call it the good old days after they just watch a whole bunch of people kill each other, okay? So they're going to remember the time period before it is oh, that was amazing, people weren't killing each other. That was really good, even if it wasn't the best of the best. But however, better living conditions did occur in most of Northern Europe, more than in Southern or Eastern Europe, still behind. We have some crazy stuff we're going to start to see happen, like Italy, Russia. That's why we're having all those people flee to the United States, Latin America, and Canada. And so things are better in Northern, Western Europe. People gradually enjoyed higher wages while the price of food declined. More money for other stuff is what that means. If food is going to cost you less and you're getting paid more, we're going to start spending it on things, luxuries we didn't have before. Maybe if you didn't have that one servant, or you have one servant, you have two. Or, you're going to invest in some of the new tech. We're going to have movies come out. Maybe you'll go to the movies at this time period. You might buy a car that's going to come out here, or a record player, any of those things. Increased leisure time is going to result as well as this. If you're making more money and you're not having to work harder or longer, you are going to also have that money to spend on leisure time. And these are things we really we take for granted in America, that you didn't just always have sports to go watch or participate in sports or have movies to go see. These were things you did not have time to do for this time period. You were just trying to make sure little Jimmy got a name and lived past it. I mean, you were like working on other things. And so leisure time is going to become important. So we're going to talk about that. So increased consumption, we're going to talk about leisure time. Sports are going to begin to attract increased spectators and participants. Not only could you go watch these new sports, you could play them because you have time to join that evening league or weekend leagues or whatever you're going to do. Got all kinds of funny like guys sports leagues here. Bicycling is going to become a huge like enthusiastic sport for men and for women. We have the baseball poster up there. Sports clubs will grow significantly. Soccer, football, rugby, bicycle, and automobile races, track and field become very big at this time. That you can go and do all of these things. Like I said, a huge bicycle craze will sweep Western Europe. Part of this is they've just invented the rubber tire, so that an affordable rubber tire. So bicycles are all the craze. Just a side note here, this is about the time that, Britain is becoming very imperialistic. And so they have really, there's some like rubber in Africa, and we should totally go down there and set up some colonies and take over these peoples, and social Darwinism that we're going to get to, and we're more civilized, so we should just have the right to do that because we're more civilized. So, increased number of women are going to be able to take part in bicycling and sports clubs. Women. The corset goes out the window here. You can be thankful that you don't have to get up every day, hold onto a bedpost, and have somebody try to make your waist like 15 inches. They get rid of the corset so you can start to move more freely and you can participate in some of this leisure time because there's no way that you actually, you could like sit on a bicycle and kind of look like you're riding, not in a corset. You can breathe in those things. Anybody ever had to like put a corset on for a play, like an actual yeah. Oh, heck no. I love these time periods in history, but I could not have worn the clothes. It was like painful, and you have like permanent, like moved ribs from it.
When
No.
we had to put them on for plays, the instructor told us to puff our lungs out so we could breathe. Because
If you don't, you will pass out on stage. I've seen it happen. So the emerging sports culture will mirror the growth of aggressive nationalism in the late 19th century. This isn't a connection a lot of students make. Like, now we start to be like, you piss on your country, we just beat you in soccer, Like, this is like an outlet of nationalism. And what is one of the biggest competitions of all nations in the world? Is going to reappear this time.
The World Cup?
World Cup? Not just for soccer, also the Olympics reemerges from ancient Greece at this time. Think 1896 was the first Olympics again. So we get Olympics, and it's like, so they're going to start to support like who wins Olympics by superiority of race. So like, booyah, we just beat you, our nation's better. So this becomes an outlet for nationalism. Not quite a healthy one, because if you remember some of the crazy Olympics we're going to get into, it gets a little crazy, but here's where it starts. Cafes and taverns are going to start to enjoy increased patronage. Department stores are going to grow significantly. Dance halls are going to open. Leisure time. New inventions mark the era. Here's just a couple of them. We have the telephone, the gramophone, which is like an early record player, the radio, which will become a major source of leisure time, the automobile, and the first movies. And so, yes ma'am. Okay, so we have all of this going on. Education. So these kids, some of them are not required to work, especially middle-class children anymore. Their income's not needed for their family. And so education is going to change. Education is going to start being taken over by the state. Who had taken care of education before the state?
The church.
The church. Very good. Thank you. The church had taken care of it. So education is going to become more secularized or less religious. It's going to emphasize loyalty and service to the state. By 1900 in England, all children 5 to 12 years old will be required to attend primary school. You would be trained and educated, a trained and educated populace of each state. Remember, this goes back to nationalism. My kids are smarter and better than your kids in your nation. So we're trying to improve your nation. In France, the Ferry laws will require children ages 3 to 13 to attend primary schools, which are elementary schools, and schools were free. What I mean by free is they came out of your tax money. Okay, so before this, remember, only the wealthy could really afford to send their kids to school. We're going to see a significant increase in literacy at this time period, but girls, we're still going to have less access to education. Only if your family had money to pay for your education are you going. So a little bit better if you're middle class or higher class women, but we're still not quite there yet. And this is where we get into the main topic of today's discussion, and that is science. Scientific ideas and methods are going to enjoy huge popularity and prestige in the public mind after 1850. This is where science becomes a religion. This is where it really takes over as like people's go-to answers for the world around them instead of religion. All right, so this is the importance of science. It becomes almost a religion. People can see how the link between science and technology improved their quality of life. Like they've just seen electricity, which would have been pretty amazing if you didn't have it before. Medical care, vaccines, all of these things are going to start to say, wow, science totally, cleared up that plague, but the church hadn't been able to back, so science is going to become almost a religion. Part of that is going to be with the bacterial revolution, which is going to be significant in reducing the mortality rate. We talked about, like the advent of knowing to clean surgical tools before, and that it wasn't smells that caused disease, but it was bacteria. And so now here's the bacterial revolution, and so we're going to start to reduce the mortality rate at this time. We're going to see Louis Pasteur is going to develop the germ theory of disease. Okay, the germ theory of disease, and he is going to invent, and this is him right here in his lab, he is going to invent that ideal of pasteurization. Does anybody know what the number one product that is pasteurized is? Milk. Yeah, and pasteurization is a process that is going to heat something to a certain degree, not to get all technical and fancy on you, but to take out the bacteria. Yeah, I mean, it's cleaning it, it's raising it to a heat high enough to kill anything that could harm you in your food. Pasteurization. Not all countries pasteurize equally, especially when it comes to eggs and milk and cheese. The USA pasteurizes pretty much everything, just because of our high food regulations. But it's going to cut down on the mortality rate. Like, you're not going to eat something that's going to kill you. So we have this. It kills bacteria, namely in milk. New knowledge helped reduce food poisoning. If we would have known these kind of things before the Civil War, like if we had figured out like bacteria caused illness rather than odors or smells. Did we talk about this last time? I feel like we talked about it already. Yeah. Okay. I feel like I'm repeating myself. And I'm like, did I tell the other class that? Okay, so our next one is Joseph Lister, and he is going to give us the antiseptic principle. And I didn't put a slide just on there for him, but this is him down here. Okay, so we're back to like the bacterial revolution. And so,
Who was the one that took the yuck from a girl that had cowpox because she was a deer maid and rubbed it into a scratch on another boy's arm, and then later, after he had healed, poked him with a bit of blood infected with smallpox to see if he would catch it or not?
that name is not coming to the top of my head. Not something I know right now, but something I can find out for you. There's that little gem of really unethical medicine I had not heard before. So we have, where did I stop with Lister? Joseph Lister developed the antiseptic principle in performing surgeries. He is going to say you need to kill the bacteria because most people, like we talked about before, were dying from the surgeries, not from the wounds or the illness that got them into surgery. And so we're going to see results in fewer people dying of infection from surgeries. And you can remember, I always remember Lister by Listerine. What does Listerine do in your mouth? It kills the germs, bacteria, which cause bad breath. So I always remember that Listerine. It's named after him. I think it's like carbolic acid is what they like. See this little bottle, this little spritz bottle down here. I think at this time they're using carbolic acid to like flush the wound. Yeah. What? Iodine is not until in between the Civil War and World War I, like in that time period. What?
Typically, penicillin wasn't invented by the ancient Egyptians who had put moldy bread on cuts because it was the same stuff.
Petri dish, yeah. We'll get, yep. Eventually you'll get like Lysol and stuff that comes out of this. Lysol, Lister, killing bacteria. I always remember all of those good household cleaning things. Diseases such as typhoid, typhus, cholera, and yellow fever will now be under control due to more vaccines. Okay? So, then we get, and all of these guys, I'm not a chemistry teacher. I'm not a physics teacher. I'm not a biology teacher. teacher, although I know quite a bit about biology. I'm going to give you what you need to know for the AP Euro test on the science part. But I am not going to take you through everything you will learn in those classes. Nor would I expect you to go into a field of work in this line. Don't go become a chemist and say, oh, Mrs. T told me about the periodic table. This should be enough to get me and blow up a building. Like, go ask that teacher who teaches you chemistry about this, and they'll know better. But I'm going to introduce the AP Euro style. So, Dmitry Mendeleev, 1834 to 1907, organized the rules of chemistry by developing the periodic table. Here is his very first one. Here's probably what you guys you've had to memorize that already, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have. You guys don't have to memorize it.
We had to.
Yeah, do. I demand you go back and have to memorize it.
You just learn certain rules.
Yeah, like there's like 2 rows.
Yeah, we didn't
Not
know.
even.
I don't know.
The
That
medals.
that's not even fair. Tell me that you guys had to like memorize the whole bill of the preamble to the Constitution.
Oh, yeah.
All right. That's all right. All right. So next we have Michael Faraday. This is his actual lab. You can like visit it if you're into that kind of thing. To me, what just got captured on video that I don't know?
Just talking about the preamble.
Oh.
I hear it later anyway.
Yeah. Yay, something to go back. What minute are we on? I'm going to Michael Faraday slide. Go back and listen. All right. So, we get... I think a picture is enough of his lab. I don't feel the need to go tour it, but if you ever choose to do so. And he is going to give us the basic discoveries on electromagnetism for those of you who care or drive motors. Okay, that's just, yeah, there you go. Woohoo! It resulted also in the first generator, and it'll be applied to the development of electric motors, those electric lights, and electric streetcars that we've already talked about. So, next is Comte. And he is going to give us, he is the father of sociology. Sociology is really like a really great class. And did any of you guys pair that with psych? Take one semester of psych and one of soc. Okay, soc is like the study of people, psychology is the study of the mind. And he's the father of sociology. And he is going to give us the term positivism. Hint, hint. AP Prep, you might want to know this word. Positivism is, he says that all intellectual activity progresses through predictable stages. Thus, humans would soon discover the eternal laws of human relations through the study of sociology. And then he's going to say that once we figure this out, that we're going to have then the perfect life. Like, he thinks that there's a way to get there. And so, this slide doesn't show up very well. But here's his 3 stages of history. He says the first human stage is the theological era, where you turn to your religion, the God. God is going to answer all your questions here. This is the first. It kind of, it follows how we did things. We're going to turn to God for all of the answers of our world around us. Then he says the second stage is called metaphysical. And in the metaphysical stage, you use your reason and rights. So this would be like the Enlightenment. Like, you want reason and rights, and you want everything to be determined by those natural laws of your rights. And then he's going to say the third stage is called positivism. And positivism is all about the individual. Okay, it's all about you. Romanticism. Be yourself. March to your own drum. Do your thing. Flute your flute, Greg. Be yourself. You're just going to be you. Okay, so these are the 3 stages. And then he says there's a 4th stage. There's this 4th stage that once you've accomplished all of these, you are going to end up in an eternal laws. Like, you have figured out the laws of the universe at this point, and you are now in an ideal, perfect society. Okay? And he is going to give us social sciences. So you are in a social sciences class. Anything, history, humanities, social sciences. Socialism, the study of people, of the world around you. He believed that social scientists could help regulate society for the benefit of everyone. So it's very utilitarianism, it's for the greater good. He also believed that in the religion of science, and he believes that experts, people that are highly educated in science, should be the rulers. Should be, you almost think back to like the Greeks who philosopher kings should rule the world. He thinks like scientific kings should rule the world. Okay, next we get Darwin. You guys should probably be familiar with Darwin. He gives us his work on the origin of species by the means of natural selection in 1859. This is going to give us the theory of evolution. Okay, you learn about evolution in school. Controversial topic in some schools, but you learn about this process of evolution. You can see on the boat is called like the HMS Beagle, isn't it? I know it's like a dog's name. HMS Beagle. Yes. Some are still teaching creationism in their science classes. I will not weigh in on that. All right, so he's on like the HMS Beagle, and he finds this island, and he finds all of these different species of birds, and he's going to give us this theory that all life had gradually evolved, from one ancestor, and they are all in an unending struggle for survival. Like whoever's going to win, you're going to be the winner. If you're the biggest, you're best, and the species that were most able to adapt are going to be the winners. And so this is what he says, and this is how he's going to explain that there's multiple species of the same kind of animal, like why there's not just cardinals, but there's all kinds of different birds, they all came, but they're all adapting. The impact on this is the theory of evolution, like this one, survival of the fittest. I don't think he got the memo. Like he's trying to hang on to this other lizard. Let him go. You will survive. You will get to have babies. He needs to die. XX. Okay, so he didn't get the memo on survival of the fittest. All life had gradually evolved from a common ancestral origin, in an unending struggle for survival, and species that are most able to adapt are going to survive. He is going to have an impact on religion with this, but before I talk about that, I want to tell you about something called the Darwin Awards. And these awards thank the people who were so dumb they eliminated themselves from our race so that they didn't have any children. And they get published every year. They just released the new ones, and in fact, all people who find the site can vote. And I thought this would be a funny little segue to, like, if you needed to go to the bathroom or have a break. These are just funny, but they're actual awards. They've been going on for a very long time. These are 2010s because this is the year that I found out about it and voted, so I feel very invested in this one. So 9th place. We're just going to go through the 9th places of, through the world. Thank you, Darwin Awards, for you not living long enough to produce a child. Okay? So in Detroit, a 41-year-old man got stuck and drowned in 2 feet of water after squeezing his head first through an 18-inch sewer grate to retrieve his car keys. All right? That is 9th place. Thank you. Thank you guys for not having children. 8th place. A 49-year-old San Franciscan stockbroker who totally zoned when he ran, totally zoned out while he's running, accidentally jogged off a 100-foot cliff on his daily run. The same place he ran every day. Yeah.
Like runner's high,
Yeah. 6th place. While at the beach, Daniel Jones, 21, dug an 8-foot hole for protection from the wind and had been sitting in a beach chair on the bottom when it collapsed, burying him beneath 5 feet of sand. People on the beach used their hands and shovels trying to get him out, but could not reach him. It took rescue workers using heavy equipment almost an hour to free him. Jones was pronounced dead at a hospital. Yeah. He dug a hole to put his beach chair in because it was windy out. And it collapsed.
On the beach.
Yeah, I don't know all of it. I'm pretty sure he was already dead, but probably still had a little bit of vitals. He suffocated, so usually it takes a while to pronounce him dead. So, 5th place, Santiago Alvarado, 24, was killed as he fell through the ceiling of a bicycle shop he was burglarizing. Death was caused when the long flashlight he had placed in his mouth to keep his hands free rammed into the base of his skull as he hit the floor. Yeah. 4th place, Sylvester Bridle Jr., 26, was killed as he won a bet with friends who said he would not put a revolver loaded with 4 bullets into his mouth and pull the trigger.
Wait, what?
He put 4 bullets in a 5-chambered gun.
So Russian roulette.
Yeah, but without the roulette, because he never spun it. He
Oh
just
my
put
God.
4 in. Yeah.
And his friends little dude.
Isn't that kind of like
His
a...
friends like
Yeah.
So,
So, thank you, Darwin, and survival of the
I thought his
fittest.
friends should be questioned.
They probably was like, I know you wouldn't do that, and he just yeah, I don't, yeah. Third place, after stepping around a marked police patrol car parked at the front door, a man walked into H&J Leather and Firearms, intent on robbing the store. The shop was full of customers and a uniformed officer was standing at the counter because there was a police car there. Upon seeing the officer, the would-be robber announced a holdup and fired a few wild shots from a target pistol. The officer and a clerk promptly returned fire, and several customers also drew their guns and fired because they're in a gun store. The robber was pronounced dead at the scene by paramedics. Crime scene investigators located 47 expended cartridge cases in the shop. The subsequent autopsy revealed 23 gunshot wounds. Ballistics identified rounds from 7 different weapons, and no one else was hurt. I mean, a gun and leather store. This is like bikers with guns. Anyway, honorable mention. So third place. Paul Stiller, 47, and his wife Bonnie were bored just driving around at 2 a.m. So they lit a quarter stick of dynamite to toss out the window to see what would happen. Apparently they failed to notice that the window was rolled up. Yeah, and that couple was probably going to end, it's 2 in the morning, probably going to end up having sex. They just saved us from their child. Alright? Carrie Bingham had been drinking with several friends when one of them said that they knew a person who had bungee jumped from a local bridge in the middle of traffic. The conversation grew more excited, and at least 10 men trooped along the walkway of the bridge at 4:30 a.m. Upon arrival at the midpoint of the bridge, they discovered that no one had brought a bungee rope. Bingham, who had continued drinking, volunteered and pointed out that a coil of lineman's cable lay nearby. They secured one end around Bingham's leg and then tied the other to the bridge. His fall lasted 40 feet before the cable tightened and tore his foot off at the ankle. He miraculously survived his fall into the icy water and was rescued by 2 nearby fishermen. Bingham's foot was never located. He's the only one that survived, but he's definitely not the fittest now.
So now he has no foot.
Yeah. And the winner is, and this one makes my stomach hurt, zookeeper Friedrich Reichstall. So we've had a lot of Friedrichs. Paderborn, Germany, fed his constipated elephant 22 doses of animal laxative and more than a bushel of berries, figs, and prunes before the plugged-up packager finally got relief. Investigators say ill-fated Friedrich, 46, was attempting to give the ailing elephant an olive oil enema when the relieved beast unloaded. And it doesn't go on to say, but he gets covered in 200 pounds of manure and died. I mean, what a shitty way to go, right? Survival of the fittest at its finest. So, if you guys are really interested, you could post some fun other Darwin Awards to the Edmodo page for extra credit. They do them every year. I haven't seen 2014. I mean, like, they just put out 2013. I haven't seen nominees for 2014 because it's still really early. But they usually give you, quite a while to vote. Which one did I? Because it makes my stomach hurt. Like, I just thinking about, like, enema, like, you're loose.
Why didn't you just run? Like, why were you standing
I was making the slide and my husband goes, and I'm like, is this really horrible? I'm going to say it now. He's like, don't say that. I was like, but I'm just saying, like, what if your mouth was open and everything?
Oh my god.
I would have, like, got him up.
Okay.
I was like, baby.
So on a more serious note, I love how we go from like death by elephant poop to Darwin's theory refuted literal interpretation of the Bible. It is going to contradict the book of Genesis that says that God created, man and woman in their full form and all of these animals, in an instant, And that Darwin is going to directly refute that by saying that we had to evolve from one common ancestor, and and that we're evolving from that. And so, of course, it's going to cause crisis in some churches. I mean, that's a big deal. You've just refuted like the foundation of the book of Genesis. So
like books and stuff gonna be up there on the shelf for a bit.
they were, yes. Very much so. And it's still in the United States. There's some science classrooms. You guys are lucky to be in a very evolved school district. I like that, very evolved school district. Anyway, I mean, there's some schools that, teachers are not allowed to discuss, and even history teachers not allowed to mention, like, Darwin. I mean, those aren't in their standards, like, because there's a big controversy over creationism, which is teaching science from the point of view of the Bible. I mean, I don't choose to take sides. I just choose to say that these are discoveries people proposed. I mean, not every discovery I've told you I've been like, that was a good one. Like, I really definitely don't think it was a good idea to kill a bunch of Jews because the plague broke out. But somebody said that, there you go. So, of course, he's going to need some backup. And I have a bulldog. And so Thomas Huxley's always kind of been like, he reminds me of my bulldog Bun Bun. He looks just like her. Like, her real name's Bunny, but we call her Bun Bun. We saved her from a puppy mill, so she's already named. She was a breeder dog. But anyway, she looks just like him. Like her jaw and like her little ear. Like anyway, he becomes Darwin's biggest supporter and is actually called Darwin's Bulldog. What? Yes. One of my kids drew that yesterday. Percy the penguin. So he becomes Darwin's bulldog. He becomes his biggest supporter. He backs him. He just kind of he really moves the Darwinian movement forward. Okay, he becomes a very firm advocate for it. And so then we get Herbert. It kind of looks like a bulldog too. We get Herbert Spencer, who's going to apply Darwin's ideas to human society. This is where things get a little icky depending on who you are, because he's going to say, if it works in nature, Herbert Spencer, he should be right under right there. Yep. He's at the bottom of page 9, where it says social Darwinism. He's going to begin out of this to apply Darwin's ideas to human society. Yes?
Is Thomas Huxley's middle name, is it A or is it?
Is it an H?
Yeah, because in the packet,
Uh-huh.
it would give like a T.H. Huxley and then a T.A. Huxley.
Oh, did I? I believe it's H.
H.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Sorry. I must. How did you get an A from an H?
I can type here, I'll show you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So he applies Darwin's ideas to human society. So it's going from animals to humans, and so that's going to start to say that certain races or nationalities or ethnicities of people are better than others because we're more evolved. And so that's going to step into some new ground. And this is going to be called social Darwinism. And so he's going to say survival of the fittest. Like, I almost put a picture of that movie cover, Mean Girls, here, because that would be kind of like a high school version of survival of the fittest. There's like this echelon of like girls that move to the top, and they kind of like just nobody under them matters. But survival of the fittest in humans, natural laws dictated why certain people were successful and others were not. And so they're going to start to use this like about intelligence, about disabilities, like you're just not selected. Like, that's a pretty harsh thing to start saying. Later used by imperialists to justify the conquest of weaker peoples. The British and Africa are going to say, we're industrialized, we are more evolved than you, we are better than you, we should just be able to take your land and your resources from you. So this is going to be applied in some kind of ways. We also used by other major industrialists to justify their wealth while so many others struggled. And so like even people today, like I'm wealthy because I worked hard and I'm fitter and I survived, and you're just poor and I shouldn't help you because you're supposed to die, and if I help you that's going to upset the whole balance of the world. Yeah, I mean, like, it's like kind of crazy. So, I mean, and one of the biggest things that social Darwinism, like that picture here, like, don't help. Social Darwinists would say, if you help, you're messing up the whole order. Then you have all these weak people who are going to have babies, and all their weak babies are going to survive. You need them to do to themselves what they're doing here. Like, let them stick their head in 2 feet of water and drown. Like, it's going to say, don't help them out. And so that goes against that humanitarianism we're talking about with romanticism. Okay, it's like, duh, do you want to be with the whole world, those kind of people? Or would you rather feel a little bit bad that this group of people died right now and it's all us later? Like, that's kind of like a, yeah. You know, take with it what you will, no comment there. So, Spencer's ideas are, of course, are they popular with the poor? No, they're very popular with the upper class, with the wealthy, who would use that as a thing to say, we should pay more taxes to help them out, or make relief programs, or make welfare, because we're just prolonging and continuing the weaker state of nature. Okay? So, don't help strong survive, do. Yeah. So, that moves us into his other book, Darwin's other book, just a quote to tell you how he feels like this, about this. With savages, the weak in body or mind are soon eliminated, and those that survive commonly exhibit a vigorous state of health. We civilized men, on the other hand, do our utmost to check the process of elimination. We build a silence for the impeccable, for the imbecile, the maimed, and the sick. We institute poor laws, and our medical men exert their utmost skill to save the life of everyone to the last moment. There is reason to believe that vaccination has preserved thousands who, from a weak constitution, would formerly have succumbed to smallpox. Thus, the weak members of civilized societies propagate their kind. No one who has tended to the breeding of domestic animals would doubt that this might be highly injurious to the race of man. And so what he is saying is, if you were weak enough to be susceptible to dying from smallpox, it should have happened. He is comparing the breeding of animals, like we talked about, with Blakewell, and like you would only choose 2 prize dogs to get together to breed to human breed. You should have selective breeding in humans. It should be. It's it. I mean, it's not just coincidence. All the movie stars have twins. Like, they plan those pregnancies. Like, they choose to do those things because they want to get the biggest bang for their buck. They get paid a lot to be skinny, and so getting 2 babies out in one is better for their career.
How did they do that? How did they do that?
They take the 2 eggs out, they fertilize them, they put the 2 eggs in.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you have a lot of money.
Yep, they have a lot of money. And it's not too far down the possibility line that if you have enough money when you're procreating that you might just decide that you really love your husband's blue eyes and you'd like the baby to have blue eyes. Yeah? All right. So our next thing is we're moving into psychoanalysis. Freud. Oh man, I have a mind in psychology. Freud's a trip. Freud is, he's kind of fun. I don't agree with everything he says, but I mean, he starts like this, like maybe you should talk about your problems and there might be different levels of consciousness. So Sigmund Freud is considered one of the 3 giants of the 19th century thought, along with Darwin and Marx. He's from Vienna. Anybody remember where Vienna is? Austria. So he's Austrian. Very good. In contrast to rationalism of the Enlightenment, Freud believed that humans were largely irrational. So he's going to say, we don't have a sound enough mind process to figure things out on our own. We are irrational and we don't even know why. We don't even know how we're irrational. And so he is going to start to question liberalism and rationalism. He is going to give us the 3 parts of our brain. And so the best example, and those of you at AP Psych are probably like, you've heard this year, so yeah. So you have the 3 parts of your brain. It looks like an ice cube. An iceberg. Yes, I guess an ice cube. I don't know. All right. Anyway, so like the Titanic, this is all they could see. So all that you can see here is above the water. There's a little bit of it here, and then you have your other 2 parts. So you have the ego, the superego, and the id. And these are these are all beneath. And we'll get to this picture in a second. But so you have these 3 parts of your brain, so like an iceberg. So ego, people can see this. This is like what you put out there. This is like that face you put on when you come to school. Like this is that. The ego is what you're showing people. This is what you want them to see you as. It might not be your true self, but this is what you've built up. I kind of like to compare it to a mask, so like people can see it, but what's underneath sometimes, like, I mean, I'm having a really bad day today, but I need to try to stay positive. So my ego would be showing you like happy, like jump around, like let's get this done side. What's underneath, with nobody to see, what's underneath would be the stuff that's under the water. And so your ego is what people can see. Your subconscious is going to be the superego. So you have your superego here that you kind of, it's your subconscious. Like, it's like you don't even know. Like you're not aware. Like this is what makes you irrational because this stuff is going on under here and you don't even know why this is happening. And then you're gonna get your id, okay? So your ego is kind of all about like what your needs are. Like how do I get food? Like these are just like things. It's just there. Going through this. Your super ego, I like to say, shoulds all over you. It's like should I? It's like should I do it? I don't know. Should we? You know, it's like those angels on your shoulders. It shoulds. I like to say it shoulds all over you. Like you want to go to that party and you're like, oh, but am I grounded? And I can sneak out, but I'm grounded. It shoulds all over you. Like I should. It's like craps all over your plans. I shouldn't do that. It's my. There you go. So that's what the superego is doing. It causes all of the problems in your life, is what Freud would say. The superego, all should and all over you, causes all the problems in your life because you're suppressing your natural urges. You're suppressing these natural things that you need, okay? And this is causing all your problems. And all of these shoulds kind of come from like what society expects of you, what your parents expect, all of this sort of thing. And so he is going to say that thus people are not in control of themselves as many like to believe, because we have all these wants we're unaware of. Like we're not even aware of it, so we can't be rational. And that's what he's saying. And he's going to emphasize that sexuality was a key driving force in one of our makeups. So one of those biggest desires he's going to say is sexuality. And he's going to say it's all this should and all over it. Like, oh, I shouldn't do that. Society says I shouldn't have sex at this age. And society says I shouldn't have sex with this many people. And by repressing all of this, we are actually hurting ourselves. And so he becomes the founder of psychoanalysis. And this kind of becomes, this what you think of when you think of like a shrink. They're different now. I mean, but the old school concept, psychoanalysis. He said the only other way to like release all of this belt up is to like talk it out with like a psychologist. And so he's going to develop psychoanalysis. He is going to believe hysteria of his patients originated in unhappy early childhood experiences. Freud, I think I have the perfect, did I not put that in there? Anyway, Freud, I thought I had a funny picture. It must be at the end. Anyway, Freud, like mama things and like phallic images and like Freudian slip. He interprets a lot of crazy stuff out of sexuality. And like your intense, like if you're a girl child and your intense love for your father is like your deep down necessity and attraction to your father, and then you grow out. Yeah. And same with boys, like you're like when your mom is boy, that comes, it's like, he makes this like underlying sexuality the purpose of everything, kind of crazy. He also is going to give you like the book Interpretation of Dreams, and he's going to say that you're like releasing all of these wants in your dreams through these symbols, and like people pick apart your dreams, and you should be hypnotized and go to psychotherapy. I think he had his own mama issues personally. He was really, really, really sexist. Yeah. Through hypnosis and sleeping, you can get rid of your neurosis or your desire that causes your psychological problems because you're suppressing it. So Freud, you can look more on him. So next is physics. Like I said, I'm not a physics teacher, but we have Marie and Pierre Curie. They are going to discover the first radioactive element, radium, in 1910. So this becomes very important here. We don't have to go into a lot of detail because all they're going to really ask is they might say the person who invented or discovered this is whom or who. And you would want to be able to pick their names out. We won't go into a lot of detail. Your textbook reading will have enough. Next we get Ernest Rutherford, who split the atom in 1919. Atoms are made up of smaller stuff, so that's kind of important. They used to think like the atom was the smallest thing. He's going to say, whoa, there's other things in the atom, and you guys have drawn these a million times already in high school, right? Yeah, so I don't need to go there. This is the fun part of my job, because you guys have already been educated on this part, and I can just go on. So next we get Max Planck, and he's going to give us quantum theory. And if you even ask me to explain more about quantum theory than I'm going to explain right now, you are kicked out of this class. So Max Planck, subatomic energy is emitted into uneven little spurts called quanta, not in an even steady stream as previously thought. Quantum physics is just like it's quantum physics. I'm not going to go all the way into quantum physics here. Thus, matter and energy might be different forms of the same thing. It shook the foundation of 19th century physics that viewed atoms as the stable, indestructible building blocks of matter. So he's going to say everything people thought they knew, now they don't. He's pretty much going to tell us, like, what the bleep do we know. He pretty much unravels. I think his book is actually called What the Bleep Do We Know. He actually, like, unravels, like, everything that science had been sitting on is kind of like he just, and quantum physics all the way. Might as well have shook my world for all I know. I've never used it in my life. So, yes, ma'am.
Obviously, but some of his work actually proved the later Schrodinger's cat, or Schrodinger's cat. And then there was an experiment, I think in Switzerland, where they were shooting 2 protons through a beam, and then when they weren't observing it, then it would go randomly. But whenever they turned on a little switch and they let them see the protons moving, they would go in straight lines.
So,
Yeah.
wait, the cat one was where they put like a cat in like a bomb somewhere.
In a box, and it could be simultaneously both dead and alive.
So it could be dead or alive. I don't know. I didn't observe it.
Yeah.
But as soon as you open the thing
Yeah.
and watch it, it's like, oh, it's one or the
Yeah,
other.
this sounds like an Eli Zeb conversation that would be had, like, in first, and I'm just like, yeah, you sit in that corner and talk about, what the bleep do I know? So,
Where do they sit?
they sit in the back left-hand corner of my first hour. So last person to talk about today is Albert Einstein. This should go pretty quickly for you guys. He failed algebra, by the way, if you're feeling particularly poor about your algebra grade in high school. Yeah, he like totally failed. So there you go. In 1905, he gives us the theory of relativity of time and space. He challenged traditional ideas of Newtonian physics. He challenged what people thought that they knew. So these guys shake it up. Freud shook it up. Like, we didn't know we had all this subconscious. He gives us that theory, like, you put 2 twins when they're like 20 years old on a spaceship, and you send one like at the speed of light 10 years out and then 10 years back in, both speed of light, so the twin in space would still be 20 and the twin on Earth would be 40 now. Yeah. So there you go. He theorized that time and space are relative to the viewpoint of the observer, and only the speed of light is constant. He united an apparently infinite universe with the incredibly small, fast-moving subatomic world. He gives us E equals mc squared, which I know you've heard about. And so, yeah, fascinating guy. Failed algebra, really smart. Here's him young. You know, we rarely see a picture of him young.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, you can kind of tell. And, I like him old. I think he's kind of like that weird, funky grandpa you wish you had, So, here's where I put that funny picture. There you go. Dear Sigmund Freud, your mom. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. There. So, impact of new scientific theories on the European mind. Darwinism is further challenging the Bible's account of the creation of humans, where humans come from. Freudian psychology is going to undermine the belief that humans were rational beings and that we're in control of our emotions, because he's going to say we are not. Impact of new physics is going to overturn the Newtonian view. How long ago was it I taught Newton to you? Like, we're overturning that now. So those days are gone, and all of the constants that have been there shattered the popular belief that the universe could be easily explained, challenged long-held ideas. See, I would have done better with, like, Newton time. Like, don't ask me to explain quantum physics. Like, give me these little, like, simple rules. Woohoo, let's go, Newton. Or as Zeb would say, base Newton, because that's what he writes all over his papers. Anytime he has Newton to write about. Base Newton. Einstein's theory of relativity now theorized that the universal laws were relative. Scientists realized they knew less about the universe than previously thought. And uncertainty is going to lead and later feed to pessimism of Europe's society in the wake of World War I, especially when they start killing each other. Like this uncertainty of like, oh, we don't even know there were these rules, and now Freud's saying we don't even can't control our own mind, and quantum physics is saying that we don't really know, and Albert Einstein has unraveled all of these things. Like it leads to a lot of pessimism after World War I. Like they see this like horrible world war, and they're like, maybe we aren't rational enough to stop things like this from happening. So that's where we end today. I promised you that I would kind of keep it in class to make your weekend work much less. So let's go back over our agenda really quick, do our QD, and make sure we're all on the same page. So I will stop the recording.